Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am the host as always. Joining me is my guy, Tyler, again, appropriately wearing the offensive line mastermind shirt as we are about to dive into some Joe Alt takes. You know, we dive into the deep nitty gritty of what you guys want to hear. So can't wait to dive in there. Tyler, how you doing today, man?
Didn't even change my shirt. I've actually been sitting here since the game. No, seriously, watching Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, I had to wear the shirt again, man. I don't know if it's good vibes or what, but Joe Alt, man, was something special. Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I have the offensive line mastermind hoodie, and it's still too warm to wear hoodies, so I can't wear that, or else I would be joining. But if you're new here, we are going to dive into some of the takeaways that we have after we have watched the film from the Chargers game on Sunday against the Carolina Panthers. Not a ton of juicy takeaways, I'm sure, from a headline perspective. But we are going to dive into a lot of stuff that we have kind of just gleaned from watching the tape. You know, being able to have access to all 22 to the coach's film is fantastic. It gives us a lot of insight that we miss on game day. If you kind of really focus in on like what we talk about in our post game recaps, we kind of never really dive into like, oh, the secondary did this specifically or the offensive line did this specifically, because it's too hard on the broadcast angle. So all 22 is where we'll come back and we'll kind of reset. And a lot of our takeaways during this show are probably going to be geared towards like offensive line, defensive line, cornerbacks, receivers kind of takeaways, just because that's kind of the nature of watching all 22. So it should be a lot of fun. Before we get started, what is your takeaway on the Bryce Young situation and how he played on Sunday? Because I know it's not necessarily Chargers related, but I'm trying to buffer while people get here, and I think it's worthy to talk about because the Chargers are the team that he got benched against.
So he was pretty bad. Number of instances where there were wide open guys, and the broadcast said as much, and he couldn't hit those guys. You know, rolling out to your left, got to hit whatever receiver it was, missed him by 5 yards. You're trying to attack downfield, scrambling. Here comes Denzel Perryman, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, do something.
Yeah,
knocked out. I mean, it just was not a good game. Anytime he threw it, it was incomplete or a pass breakup, or it just nothing looked good. And I think Bryce Young right now is not at a point where they think, or even I would think, that he's capable of leading a genuine offense for a very long time. Not right now. So I understand why they go with Andy Dalton. It is very early, obviously, and apparently Canales and the post-game interviews was like, hey, yeah, no, that's our quarterback. But he saw the film, and he's no longer their starting quarterback. It's Andy Dalton, who, of course, I believe his last major win was against the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken. Now he's playing them this week.
I have to go back and look, but shout out Andy Dalton, former Mountain West Conference TCU legend. It's a matter of confidence, and I think you watched the way that he played that game, and there was just no confidence in what he was seeing. There was no confidence in his ability to, fit the ball into tight windows. There was no confidence in his pocket, which honestly, if you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you watch that all 22 tape, I'd be kind of excited about the offensive line. I thought they played pretty well, unfortunately for us, which we can dive into. But I just like, you watch the interception and it just it felt like he was just kind of throwing darts at a board. It wasn't really feeling like he was like trusting what he was seeing. He wasn't trusting the players. It was very predetermined. I'm just going to throw this ball here and then we'll see what happens. And then you see his face afterwards on the broadcast, and there's no confidence there. So it's, I wasn't a huge fan of his, as a draft prospect. We don't necessarily like grade quarterbacks each year, but I had Stroud and Richardson significantly graded higher from a film perspective. But I always thought like, okay, if you take Bryce and you get him into a good situation, he can be an effective quarterback. Well, the Panthers have been the worst situation in the league over the last 2 years. And so to me, it's like, is 17 games, 18 games really enough for you to justify benching the former #1 overall pick? I mean, they showed the graphic again of who the Bears have been able to select in the draft because of this trade, plus DJ Moore. And it's staggering. So I feel bad for him. it's a ruthless business sometimes. But if I'm the Panthers, I probably try and trade him and just like there's no real point, because if Andy Dalton gets injured or he also plays poorly, you can't go back to Bryce. Like Bryce, it's over. Like you benching him this early in the season, it's done. You cannot go back to him. So
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. Another young quarterback just kind of put in a terrible situation and is not able to succeed. And like, yeah, he's getting paid, as people say, but it's like you want guys to succeed. I mean, he was taking them on overall for a reason, and now it's just they're done after 18 games. So
yeah, I was hoping another NFC quarterback would succeed, because God knows they're all in the AFC, it feels like. So
yep,
I was hoping for anybody new in the NFC to step up, and yeah, kind of a bummer that it Stroud AFC, Richardson AFC. So unfortunate. I hope they find some path forward for him, and I hope it's not like a Trey Lance situation where you give up a ton and you realize pretty quickly he's not the guy. And this is a whole different regime, right? It's not even like Shanahan at least is still with the 49ers as a whole new regime. So I feel bad, but as Damage points out, he does have $38 million guaranteed, so it could be worse.
Yeah, could be worse. All right, we'll get to the Chargers stuff now. I think we had enough of that conversation, but I was curious to kind of get your thoughts there, and again, buffer some time. All right, again, name of the show today: Chargers film review. We are calling this day of an episode upon further review, and so we're going to dive into some unsung heroes of the weekend. We'll dive into a specific narrative of the game, and then we're going to do our segment again, real or fake, diving into some storylines that the fan base is kind of talking about, national media is talking about, and we'll figure out where we stand there. All right, Tyler, unsung hero. Where do you want to go here based off of what you saw on tape?
There's another guy I want to talk about if you don't get to him, but if you do, that's totally fine. But I will go with Elijah Molden, who I almost didn't consider an unsung hero because he had the interceptions, which is very, dazzling. And we all, oh my gosh, the interception, great. But I really thought watching the entire set of film that I felt like he played far better against the run as an aggressive guy, triggering downhill in the slot, far better than I thought watching the film. I mean, he was traded for a 2026 7th round pick, and he's out there and like looks like the safety 2. Obviously, Alohi Gilman's the safety 2, but like the safety 2 that maybe JT Woods was supposed to become, or Nasir Adderley was supposed to become.
Yeah,
he's out there playing physical football. He's playing great football, great instincts. He was awesome. And if this Chargers trio of Derwin, Alohi, and Elijah Molden is your group, at least this year, but maybe even moving forward, if they can keep Molden for longer, I feel really good about that. I mean, we went into this season worried like heck about the number 22 being out there. And now watching the number 22, it's a complete 180, man. He was really, really strong out there, and I was really impressed by him in every phase.
Yeah, that's a funny point about the number 22. I kind of forget that that's a thing, but I didn't feel like there was a ton of drop off from Alohi to Elijah, which is like a major compliment to how he was playing. And it's not just the interception. Like the interception was a really, really cool play, good instincts, but it just felt like he subbed him in there, and it was like Alohi was out there. Like the communication did not drop off. The matching of routes was right there. The instincts, the quick trigger was all on display. I can't believe that this guy was just available for a 7th round pick, for a 2026 7th round pick. It's just kind of crazy to watch him go out there and instantly succeed. He gets a game ball, and he's just like, I'm just having fun out here. Like I'm just ready to play. And so it's a really cool story. I am excited to see what this looks like when Alohi comes back, because it does really feel like Elijah and his play is here to stay. Like this doesn't feel like a one-off situation. This feels like a guy who is ready to contribute and can do a lot of different things, which I think is what has been missing at that safety room, because I feel pretty comfortable about AJ Finley like playing deep. I feel like he can cover, but his run defense is a little dicey. JT Woods' run defense obviously is a little dicey. That kind of situation. Elijah, I feel like he can do everything, and he didn't really get a chance to blitz yet, which I know he can do as well. So I think starting with Elijah is a good call.
Yeah, really impressed by him. You talked about the communication. I love watching the All-22. I can't believe he's just got here, because you see him out there communicating and pointing things out, like getting the secondary working together. it's wild. Like I know he's a veteran, he's played in the NFL for a while, but he just got here, and that really speaks to like. I guess we talked more about Bowman in this regard, but like when you're starting to remind me of Ryan Ficken, where they brought in all these veterans and they all got the scheme and the system and the way they're supposed to play and avoiding penalties and how to work together like that because of great coaching. And that's been Jesse Minter so far. Like they are like Elijah Molden just got here and he's playing like he's been here for 3 years. Like you said, no drop off in, from Alohi Gilman to him, at least in this game. Yeah, it's the Panthers. I get it. They just benched their quarterback. So it's not like a great offense in front of him, but I was really impressed. I'm going to say this now because I know people will say it. I'm not ready for the Gilman benched for Molden discussion. I don't think that at all. I don't think Harbaugh would consider that, but keep Molden on the field. Whatever you have to do to keep Molden on the field as a third guy in the slot, blitzing, whatever, do that. He deserves to be out there.
No, he totally does deserve to be out there. And Alohi Gilman is a really good player in his own right. So it's not a matter. It's not that simple of just benching him and he's the new toy. Like Alohi, I think is still a better player, but for Elijah Molden to go from 19 snaps in week 1 to playing 100% of the snaps in week 2, and I wasn't sure like how to talk about this outside of like tweeting a clip of it, but the Chargers played primarily cover 2 and cover 6 in week 1 against the Raiders. And then this week they played primarily cover 1 and cover 3, which the coverage concepts are completely different from a cornerback perspective and a safety perspective. And if you just if you just isolate the 2 games, you would never guess that they're running essentially a completely different game plan. And Jesse Minter deserves a ton of credit for that. The Chargers defensive backs deserve a ton of credit for that. I don't know how much to buy the individuals, but what I buy is that this group led by Derwin James and Jesse Minter, they are communicating. They know the defense. They're comfortable. They are all kind of executing. They're all on a rope. So again, I don't know about the ceiling just quite yet, and we can dive into that a bit later. But there's no coverage mistakes at all, which I think is kind of crazy to think about. And regardless of who you're playing, what Jesse Minter has been able to do across these 2 weeks with 2 very different game plans. Elijah Molden comes in. Jasir Taylor was hurt for a little bit, didn't practice this week. That's extremely difficult to do. So I think Jesse Minter deserves a ton of credit for getting this defensive back room up to speed in a hurry, communicating at this level. And it's been awesome to see so far.
Yeah, I'm really curious. 2 more games before the bye. I'm really curious what they end up sticking with. Do they lean more into the first week or the second week? Does it not matter? Is it just whatever it is to week? It's, the issues. Think of last year. I mean, 2 games in last season, how discouraged the defensive backs were with communication, with their roles, with their rotations. And here with Jesse Minter, we heard it all off season. He simplifies things so everyone can play fast and communicate well. It's a different thing to see it. And like you said, they are not making coverage mistakes. Yeah, it's the Panthers. Yeah, it's the Raiders, whatever. They're not making mistakes right now, regardless of who's in front of them. They are not really making mistakes, at least in coverage. So it's awesome. Jesse Minter is as advertised. I know the Steelers aren't like a juggernaut offense either, but do this for another couple of weeks, man, and we got something special.
Yeah, if you can do this against the Chiefs,
Woo!
That's a big story. All right. My unsung hero here is going to be Will Dissly, and adjacent to that conversation is Simi Fehoko, who we can talk about as well. I know Will Dissly had a couple of false starts in the first week, but the man is easily the best blocking tight end I've studied on Chargers tape already through 2 weeks. If you go like, I don't have the time to do this to just get like every single run cut up. I mean, they ran the ball like 45 times on Sunday, but if you showed every single run play and when Will Dissly is on the field, there's a significant difference in the effectiveness of the overall run play. The guy is able to block edge rushers and seal the edge. He's able to get up to linebackers at the second level. He's able to block out in space. He's just doing a fantastic job of executing his specific blocks. And I went back and looked at Pro Football Focus, and if when the Chargers are running in between Slater and Disley, they're essentially getting an explosive play on every single attempt that way. Their average average yards per carry running in between the left tackle and tight end is 9 yards a carry, which is crazy. And that's where all of the explosive plays, except for J.K. Dobbins' touchdown in week 1, have come from. And that's not a coincidence to me, A, because of Disley, and B, because of Slater. But Will Disley is out here dominating in it as a run blocker. You look at his run blocking grades, and I don't think they are nearly high enough to what they should be. I don't understand what we're watching there. But Will Disley is just ho-hum, big man. I'm just going to seal the edge. I'm going to get out in space. There's no mistakes as a blocker, in my opinion, that I've seen. And it's not like he's out here just like Darnell Washingtoning folks and just like tons of pancake blocks, but he's always in the right position. The legs are always pumping. The technique is always fantastic. And he's a wall. Like, you cannot get around him in any capacity as a defender. So Will Disley, to me, has been extremely important to how the Chargers have been able to run the football. And if you really sit down and watch the tape, this guy is blocking his ass off right now.
Yeah, Will Disley's been fantastic, and I had a couple of good receiving catches as well. I think there was one, a pretty good fight for a first down. The one where there was like a really good, like 15-yarder or so, and like that second or third catch. He had 3 catches this past game. He's been awesome. You pointed out Simi Fehoko as well. I didn't realize how much he was on the field, but he had one less blocking snap than Will Disley. Like, he had 25 snaps blocking. Disley had 26 run blocking. Disley also, of course, like contributes more in the passing game, but still, like, they have him out there a lot. They had him out there quite a bit. Sure, there was garbage time, and they're just trying to run out the clock, but he was out there from the beginning to the end, on the big runs, on the Herbert run, the tush push from the end zone to just get out like the Herbert quarterback sneak. Simi Fehoko is standing behind him. Like, they have this guy active for a reason. It's for special teams. But his snaps went way up this past week. I don't know if that's because Josh Palmer was shaky going into this game or not, but he went from playing, I think, single-digit snaps to 26. And every single time he run blocked, he did, like, whether it was him or, like, the play might not have been great, but it wasn't because of him. He was always doing very, very well, blocking his ass off. On that Dobbins run, he is blocking his guy 40 yards, I think, like all the way to the end zone. Not necessarily like a perfect block by any means, but in the way, keeping a hand on him, keeping away from Dobbins. Dobbins scores because of Fehoko. Like, just working his tail off. That, to me, is like absolute unsung hero, because I didn't really pay attention to Fehoko a ton. I had no idea he almost played 30 snaps, but watching them, he was awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned, the big plays on the Justin Herbert keeper. He displaces Troy Hill like immediately and like took contact to him and then drove him 6 or 7 yards out of the play. And that was really like the only key block that Herbert needed to get a 14-yard run. So he's playing really, really hard. He's playing and he's making an impact on special teams. He's blocking extremely well. I think Palmer's injury is probably a factor there. I think just the game script in general is a factor there. But at the end of the day, he's a wide receiver. Like, he wants to catch the football and make touchdowns and all this stuff. And Jim Harbaugh's like, no, you're going to play 28 snaps and 25 of them are going to be run blocking, and you'll love it. And he does. Like, he can really, I think you really see him buying into that. So it's fantastic to see. He deserves a lot of credit for buying into that kind of role.
Yeah. One more unsung hero, unless you had another one that you want to talk about. Derius Davis. I don't think, obviously, he didn't have a target, I think. And I don't believe he had a handoff, but he was used.
Tons of cardio.
Tons of cardio, man. Mostly in the first half. I didn't see as much in the second half because I started charting his plays. Unfortunately, he was in motion when Herbert threw the interception, which kind of kills like the EPA on that particular play. But that's not because of Derius Davis. But I really appreciated how Greg Roman, it ended up being more of like Josh Palmer in the second half, Lad McConkey in the second half. But they really used Derius Davis a lot to just create like better numbers matchups in the box. So whether it's trying to get someone out of the way, shift the defense over, make someone even just pay attention to him. Defenders are trying to cheat towards Derius Davis and we run to the left while he runs right. They really used him and then eventually other guys motioning later on to try to get better numbers advantages in the run game. And I thought that was really smart. So Derius Davis, I don't believe had a target and he didn't have a rush. But by golly, that cardio helped out the Chargers quite a bit.
Yeah. Derek Klassen calls that specific type of receiver, well, not that specific, but that kind of idea is a sacrificial receiver. Somebody that is their job is to run in a straight line and take attention away from where the play is going. And that can be like an X receiver just running a bunch of go balls, or the motion guy. I hope we get to see some Derius Davis touches at some point, because I think he's really good with the football in his hands. But like early in the game, I'm like, oh, there's Darius motion. There's a Darius motion. Oh, there's a Darius motion. Oh, there's a Darius motion.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the whole first half was that. So hopefully we can get the guy some touches at some point. But, that definitely is an unsung hero.
Yeah. So we'll see what they do. They have to get him the football at least once, it's once a game, every other game. But I think the Panthers started to kind of settle in and not jump at Derius Davis. And I think that's maybe why they switched in the second half. So just get in the football at least once, just to keep the defense honest and really paying attention.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Before we get to the narrative of this week, of course, I have to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. The WNBA season is closing down. The NFL college football seasons are in full swing. The NBA season is right around the corner, which is kind of crazy to think about. And Prize Picks is the best way to get some extra skin in the game in every single sport, regardless of your flavor. Obviously, you guys here listening are Chargers fans. We love doing our Chargers Prize Picks sections of every single game. And it just is the best way to get, like I said, some extra skin in the game. So the Prize Picks has a wonderful special right now all the way through September. So we only have 2 more games here, but as long as Caleb Williams gets 1 single passing yard, that's a freebie into your selection each single week. So whether you are all aboard the J.K. Dobbins train or you're kind of a little frustrated by the Justin Herbert passing outset, but you kind of want to see it before you buy into the 200 plus yards or not. Whatever your dice is, you can be able to select on prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout for a deposit match up to $100.
I finally had a good week, man. I finally had a decent week.
Nice.
I got 220 on of all games, the Ravens Raiders game. And then, like 60 or whatever bucks it was on the Chargers game. Super easy. Like, you guys can just take the more on the green goblins, they intentionally make it easier. So the payout's a little bit less, but it's more guaranteed.
It's free money.
Yeah. Free money. And pair that with Caleb Williams, of course, and that's 0.5 yards, hit the more there, and you're golden. So I was stoked. One of my Prize Picks hit for the Chargers. Feel good about that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's get to the guy who is in the thumbnail today, and that is Mr. Joe Alt. We do a Google Doc for our rundown, and we jot notes in there every single episode as we kind of prepare for each show. And we have, for each segment for today's show, we have Tyler's choices and then my choices. And for the narrative of the week, instead of that, we just put Joe Alt rules. And that's what we're going to talk about for the narrative of the week is Mr. Joe Alt, the former first-round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. This guy is awesome. I don't know where you want to start, but I think we have to start with his performance individually against Jadeveon Clowney. And Jadeveon Clowney, who, at this stage of his career, he's not the same kind of player he was at one point in his life as the former number 1 overall pick. But he had double-digit sacks last year, and he was a top 5 run defender, edge defender in the league, according to PFF. And Joe Alt made him visibly quit. Jadeveon Clowney decided halfway through the third quarter that he was just kind of done playing football. And this is crazy for me to see. We've seen some flashes here and there at training camp and in preseason. But the guy has completely hit the ground running. I thought this was a fantastic performance against at least above average edge rusher. We'll see what the rest of the season looks like, but this is a very respectable, solid, veteran edge rusher. And Joe Alt just said, okay, you're done. You're not going to impact this game today.
Here's how good Joe Alt was. Joe Alt was so good that Malik Neighbors had 120 yards and a touchdown. And I haven't heard a word of that on Chargers media. That's how good Joe Alt was. He was. Yeah. So you got to the Joe Alt film first, and you messaged our group chat like, "Hey man, I don't want to get too excited here, but that was some effing awesome tape." I'm thinking okay, I remember him being good. Let's go watch this. the pure domination. And look, we're probably going to throw out some superlatives or some comparisons here that might get us in trouble right when they're about to face TJ Watt. But watching him reminded me of watching Lane Johnson versus Chris Rumpf, which is speaks to both of those individuals. I didn't know how good. I don't watch a ton of Eagles football like intentionally and just specifically like the entire game. But watching Lane Johnson play against Chris Rumpf like couldn't do anything. It was like absolutely negated. I'm going, oh, okay, that's what it looks like. Joe Alt looked like that against Jadeveon Clowney and anybody who came after him. He was incredible in pass protection, in the run game. Watching Clowney just give up, basically. If that wasn't giving up, I don't really know what is. There was nothing he could do against Joe Alt. It was incredible. Run game, pass protection, you name it. Brandon Thornton had a great play that he broke down, so I don't want to take credit for it, but there's a play where there was a potentially compromising position that Joe Alt could have been in. He is 6'8", so guys can get lower than him. And Clowney maybe had a shot to work the other way against him, hit a club, go around him, whatever. And Joe Alt's ability to, at 6'8", and as big as he is, to recover and reshuffle and reset himself is unreal. And that happened a couple of times. That was the notable play. But there were several times where Joe Alt maybe wasn't in perfect position, but recovered and fixed himself. Like what he's able to do, I honestly genuinely believe that game against the Panthers was better than most games I saw him play in college. The fact that he's doing it at right tackle in the NFL in his second game against Jadeveon Clowney is insane. He was so good. Then you go to the run game. They're asking him to get on the move. And you have to remind yourself, again, this guy is 6'8". How big is this guy? He's enormous. You know, we know Rashawn Slater can move, but they're different body types. They're different guys. The fact that Joe Alt was asked to do so much and flip his hips and create lanes, just unreal stuff. And you, I think, said it best. We were messaging back and forth last night. I think you said it best. There's Rashawn Slater and what he can do. He's incredible. He genuinely could be a top 5 tackle this season. But Joe Alt has like that Patrick Mahomes level that he can reach, or the Joe Thomas or the Lane Johnson level that he can reach, that is just an entire tier better than Rashawn Slater. The stuff you saw on film, again, it's very dangerous playing the Steelers and Chiefs next and saying these things, but just based on what we saw, even if the rest of the season is okay, I know Joe Alt's going to be great for a long time based on what we've seen so far.
I would call this performance a floor setter.
Yep.
Where if you are not an elite edge rusher, you're done. Like you are out of the picture against Joe Alt. That is my expectation going forward. And I think, you know, some of the week 1 stuff against Max Crosby, I mean, he only had 11 reps against Max Crosby one-on-one. You know, I thought Max probably could have given him like a win without a pressure on like 2 of them, maybe 3 of them. But for the most part, very, very outstanding reps. I think we'll get a real picture as the Chargers continue to take stuff away from him in terms of like helping him and chipping and stuff like that. But the physical traits that we've seen from Joe Alt across the preseason, in training camp, and through 2 games are crazy. This guy moves in such a way that just consistently blows my mind. In week 1, there was a play where he's obviously at right tackle and Christian Wilkins is kind of head up or kind of maybe inside shade a bit on Trey Pipkins. And the run play is a stretch left. And the responsibility that they gave Joe Alt was to reach Christian Wilkins and then seal him. And in an absurd thing to ask any right tackle against Christian Wilkins. And he got there so quick. He flipped his hips and full extension, and Christian Wilkins went nowhere. Again, Christian Wilkins, who's like one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And then this week against the Panthers, there was a play which I tweeted it, and nobody liked it, so I was a little disappointed, but it is what it is.
Where is it, Steven? I'll find it.
I deleted it out of spite. You guys don't get to
like
see
you
it.
Did? No, that's so sad. Oh
no. So the Chargers are running zone left, and there's a 3-tech right in between him, and the guy kind of like loops around, so he takes himself out of the play. And most offensive tackles in that situation just kind of like they keep going to the left and they find the next spot. That's why it's a zone run. You have the flexibility to just like go up and reach the backer, and everything would have been fine. Joe Alt instantly feels Jadeveon Clowney. So he starts this way to the left, and he instantly feels Jadeveon Clowney cutting across the face of Hayden Hurst. And he full stop turns, forearm shivers Jadeveon Clowney, and then gets up to the linebacker this way. And Gus Edwards ran right behind him for 6 yards. An absurd trait that like very few offensive tackles can hit. So yeah, like the comparisons of Lane Johnson in that kind of group, it's probably, you know, a little dicey for us, but the physical traits are insane. The way that this guy moves should not be possible for somebody who is 6'8". The pad level that Brett Coleman has tweeted out a couple of times, and I tweeted out in the preseason game, this guy had the same pad level of Willis Patrick, who is 6'2", on the same blocking play down in the end zone. It's insane. I could not believe my eyes watching him as a run blocker this week. And I think it's just going to continue to get better and better and better. And this guy hasn't even had a full offseason working at right tackle. He hasn't had a full offseason working in the strength program with Ben Herbert. It's crazy. Like, my brain cannot comprehend this level of offensive tackle. And I love Rashawn, but the ceiling that Joe Alt has is just like truly potentially like best offensive tackle in the league one day, and like challenging Penei Sewell for best offensive tackle in the league. And we're through 2 games, and this might sound crazy to a lot of people, and I'm sure like non-Chargers fans, if they find this clip, like they're going to be upset. And if he plays bad against TJ Watt, it's not going to look good. But the thing is, I expect him to play well against TJ Watt. Like, that's where we're at right now, which is so good and so crazy. And I hope everybody listening to this is excited about this as we are, because he looks awesome. He's been incredible. And I cannot wait to see what this looks like down the hall. Obviously, praying that he stays healthy for the rest of his career, because this is just, the potential here is insane. Like, I don't think Chargers fans are ready for what this looks like. This specific athlete of this size, potential, this kind of situation, I don't think we've ever seen any Chargers player like this before.
I'm glad you brought that up, because honestly, watching him, we might be watching the best offensive lineman in Chargers history. It's 2 games. I get it, guys. I get it. But you got to call it when you see it. And watching him, again, week 1 included here too, you can just tell he's different. He's different than everybody else. People are loving everything you're saying, by the way. You've been compared to being even better than ASMR, which is incredible. What a comparison there. But he's awesome. Watching Joel, I love what you said about floor raiser, both for himself maybe, and even just our expectations. Going into the game against the Steelers, I just feel a lot better. I don't know what I expected Joel to be at this point. Yeah, but it was worse than this. Like, I would have been fine. We would have been sitting here honestly praising Joe Alt's first 2 games if he had given up 6 pressures, to be completely honest. If you told me that was the outcome, I'd go, all right, cool.
Solid.
Looking good, solid, probably good in the run game, some things to clean up, no problem. He's allowed 2 pressures. And I'm sorry, but the sack that he allowed, I'm not crediting that specifically to him. I get that his guy got the sack, but it was 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Like, it's almost a coverage sack at that point, slightly on Herbert, slightly on the other, I think, defensive tackle who helped create like some pressure in the pocket too. So I'm not really putting that on Joe Alt. It's just been incredible. I can't believe what I've seen from him. And this guy, like you said, first year trying to get into the program, not a full offseason program necessarily. Obviously not a full year. Who was it? I'm sorry. Rashawn Slater was hurt in camp. So he was playing a ton of left tackle to start camp. He didn't even play like all right tackle in camp either. So, you know, I genuinely despise the iron sharpens iron thing, because it gets brought up every single freaking offseason. But genuinely, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Tuli Tuipulotu, and Bud Dupree, iron sharpened iron here, man. And Joe Alt is incredible.
Yeah, I think Khalil going out of his way and like working with Joe was huge for him too. And I wasn't planning to like go like that direction until I messaged you. I was
Yeah.
talking with some other offensive line community members. Mike Golick Jr. was tweeting about him. Jeff Schwartz was tweeting about him. Brandon Thorne did a whole breakdown of him. They're all seeing the same thing. It's just kind of like crazy to me that this is where we're at with him. Um, and again, if he struggles against TJ Watt, I don't really care. Like, I think this is TJ Watt's a really freaking good football player, but also Joe, this is about his potential and where he can get to.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not ready to crown him as like, oh, he's the best right tackle in the league right now. I think longevity matters there. I still need to see
Totally.
some more development, just like in his ability to anchor instantly and be able to, run block more consistently and be a weapon there. Like Penei Sewell is to me like the class of the right tackle position. We're not there, but I
Right.
think we are to the point where you can count the right tackles who are better than him on one hand. Like I think
Yep.
objectively, it's Penei, it's Lane, it's probably Brian O'Neill, and that might be it, depending on
Yeah.
how you feel about some of the other guys. But Joe has just ascended so much faster than I think even the most optimistic Joe Alt fan would have. I think this is just, we're seeing something truly, truly unique here. I was trying to think of a better 2-week stretch of a right tackle from the Chargers that I've seen. And like maybe like a couple Brian Bulaga games from 2020, but at least since I've been paying attention, this is it. Like I don't recall Jeremy Clary being this level of player. And he was a longtime veteran. So, Joe Alt it's just it's stunning to see what kind of play he's already putting out on tape as a rookie.
So I'm going back through some right tackles in their first years. Lane Johnson, I can't believe this, allowed 57 pressures and 10 sacks his first season.
Never would have
which
guessed that.
Wouldn't
Never
have guessed
would've
that. Then, of course, right after that, like perfect the rest of the way.
Awesome.
But that first season, Penei, he definitely struggled. There was a whole flip-flopping back and forth. He allowed 35 pressures his rookie season and 5 sacks. I don't think he played a ton. Only 600. Oh, that's pass blocking. Anyway, point is, Joe Alt, 2 pressures so far is pretty darn good. And to be completely honest, I know that all the talk this week is going to be about Joe Alt versus TJ Watt. Joe Alt versus TJ Watt. I get it. It's the marquee matchup of the week, and it's exciting. I'm going to enjoy watching it. But honestly, I don't think Jim Harbaugh's stupid enough to let TJ Watt just like tee off on Joe Alt either.
Yeah.
Obviously, we just mentioned Will Dissly, Simi Fehoko, whatever. Like they will have a plan to help him too. So it's not like, oh, here comes TJ Watt, and like, wow, how's the one-on-one's going to go the whole game for 60 reps? Like, no, it's not going to be like that. They will make sure that TJ Watt does not ruin the game either. So I expect another really solid game. But it's interesting because TJ Watt, as far as I'm aware, he is a very different rusher than Crosby and Clowney. Yeah. A bit more finesse, a bit more like, not what's the word I'm looking for? Inventory.
He's a bit more refined.
Guy. Definitely. So curious how he holds up against that.
Yeah. We're talking about Joe Alt this way, and it's legitimate, but he only had 11 true one-on-one reps against Max Crosby.
Correct.
It's not going to be a ton. Obviously Max stunts a lot. He went to the left side sometimes, but it's not just going to be him against TJ Watt, like one-on-one for the entire time. Like if you watched week 1 against the Falcons when TJ Watt kind of wrecked the game, it was a lot of just like one-on-one, like I'm just going to rush at you, because the Falcons, it was a lot of like 11 personnel and they were trying to spread the football around. That's not what the Chargers are going to do. The Chargers very clearly want to pound the rock and they want to play action, and they're going to help. And I think even against Clowney, there were 6 or 7 times where Joe Alt had help, but the rest of the game, Joe Alt was completely dominant, and he was so impactful as a run blocker that this is where we're at. So they'll have a plan for TJ Watt. I think the Chargers have already shown in 2 games that they are very aware of who the best players on the opposing teams are, and they are not going to let those players ruin your day. I'm honestly more concerned about how they handle Cam Hayward. Like, I think Cam Hayward at this point in time, he had 6 pressures this past week against the Broncos. We have not seen Trey and Zion really get tested like the way that I think we are. And that's all due respect to Christian Wilkins. I think Cam Hayward is just a different kind of pass rusher right now.
Yeah.
And then also you have Keanu Benton. So it's a different challenge for the interior this week. And that, to me, which we can dive into the pregame stuff on Thursday, but I'm more concerned about those two guys than I am TJ Watt, because I just trust Joe Alt at that level, and B, I trust that they're going to have a game plan for him, and we're not going to see a volcano or an avalanche game ever, because I just think the Chargers are going to have legitimately smart game plans, smart protection plans against these edge rushers. And then when Joe is one-on-one, he's going to handle his business like he did against Max Crosby.
Yeah, I think so. And if he loses a couple, great. But I don't expect some, like you said, some avalanche game suddenly from Joel. Like, here we got 10 pressures and 4 sacks. Not at all going to be the case. So just people are asking in the chat too. I didn't really key specifically on anyone outside of maybe Zion. I didn't really watch a ton of Bozeman, didn't watch a ton of Trey Pipkins, like specifically them. I thought overall the interior offensive line played better. Obviously, the statistics are better. Did you have any takeaways from that group?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot better overall. The Panthers ran like a very vanilla scheme up front. There was a few blitzes, there was a few stunts, but it wasn't anything crazy, where it felt like every time against the Raiders, they were an obvious passing down situation. The Raiders were sending 7, they were stunting, they were doing all this stuff, and it was very difficult for the Chargers up front. So I'm curious what the Steelers do in that regard. Traditionally, they're not a super stunt heavy team. They kind of like to let Cam and TJ and Alex Highsmith kind of just rush and go one-on-one, and they'll figure it out. I thought Zion was awesome in the run game. I thought he had some really fantastic run blocks. I thought for the most part, he was very good as a pass protector as well. But again, it wasn't a huge challenge. There wasn't a lot of the issues that he struggles with. So in that kind of situation, Zion will play well, and he did. I was a little bit more impressed with Trey in week 2 than I was in week 1 as a run blocker. I thought he was a bit more stout. I thought he had some impact blocks. I thought he had a couple pancake blocks. So that was good to see. Bozeman was kind of who I expect Bozeman to be as well. So the interior, I would say, handled their business, but I wasn't super impressed with what the Panthers were doing either.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. This weekend, as you mentioned, like Ogunjobi, Hayward, Benton, is Leal an interior defensive lineman officially, or DN? I don't know. Anyway, that group is going to test them a lot more. So we'll really find out where we're at with this interior, I think, on Sunday, because the Raiders figured out a way to get after them, and they do not have that same group as a pass rush group. Wilkins, of course, is a great interior defensive lineman, more of a run defender. This group can get after the pass.
Somebody in the chat is talking about where TJ Watt rushes from. So I'm just looking at this. I'm pretty sure that he rushes against the right tackle most of the time.
So snaps by position, he is more often he's well, it says right now only the left side.
Yeah.
I don't even see a right side rep from him.
Yeah, it's all left side from what I've seen. Again, the Steelers are we're going to rush 4. They're going to rush. TJ Watt's going to rush from the left. Highsmith is from the right. We'll sub in Herbig or whoever else. And that's kind of what they do. So TJ Watt will see a lot of Joe Alt. Alex Highsmith will see a lot of Rashawn Slater. And I expect the tackles to play well. I expect them to handle their business.
Yep. Yes.
All right, man, that felt good. That felt good.
That's feel good.
Yeah, it's great to see a player of this level. Hopefully you guys were enjoying that as well. All right, let's get to our real or fake conversation here. I want to start with, I mentioned the floor conversation with Joel. I want to start with the Quentin Johnston conversation because I think it is very real that his floor has been raised by this coaching staff. We don't know about the ceiling quite yet. He's not getting a ton of volume. I mean, he only had 6 targets this week and 1 handoff that got called back. So it's not a ton of touches. It's not a ton of diverse role. But we talked about in the offseason that we wanted this coaching staff to come in and say, hey, like, let's get this player to where he can have a reliable floor every single week, and let's raise up his confidence. And I think we are seeing this. I didn't have access to this, but Daniel Popper wrote about it, and the information is from True Media, which unfortunately is exclusive and not available to the public. So that's a kind of a bummer. But they, according to their charting, the amount of go routes and post routes that Quentin Johnston has been running are down 14% from last season. So we talked about last year, the usage never really just made sense. They kind of put him into the Mike Williams role and they just said, run the Mike Williams stuff. And that just never made any sense to us. So to that same vein, the amount of crossers that he is running are up 10%. Again, simple change, makes a lot of sense. They're able to get him yards after catch opportunities, and just get him more comfortable in the offense. I think it's really, really smart coaching. He has created 41 yards after the catch in 2 games. Last season as a whole, he only had 152. So this, to me, is, we're going to throw him a couple crossers a game. We're going to throw him a screen pass a game, and we're just going to kind of get his confidence going. And then we'll do some deep vertical stuff outside of that whenever possible. I thought it was really important that Justin Herbert said after the game that they checked to that touchdown that he threw. It was not designed to go that way. And that to me shows that Justin is really starting to trust him and that Quentin is earning that kind of confidence. So it was great to see on tape. The numbers back this up. I am buying that Quentin's floor is higher this year than it was previously. And that is good coaching. It's what we were asking of this regime to come in and do. And so far, mission accomplished there.
Yeah, I completely agree. The floor is definitely raised. Would love to see the ceiling continue to get pushed as well. But we saw the floor there. And I don't think, based on what I watched of Quentin, they're asking him to do a ton, but they're working in a wheelhouse he seems comfortable operating in. And we saw the go ball, great, awesome. Still working some short stuff. I really did like, I think maybe the 3rd quarter or 4th quarter, there was a scramble play. Justin Herbert, has to roll out to his right. He's looking for anybody to break open. Quentin Johnston sees that he scrambles. He breaks off of his route to get open, throws the ball to Quentin Johnston. I think they get like 9 or 10 or whatever it was. But just stuff like that. All the trust building stuff is so important. I think Justin Herbert, like the receiver production, I think is exponential based on like how the trust goes between Herbert and that receiver. I hate to bring it up, but like Tyron Johnson, immediate trust. Obviously Keenan Allen, immediate trust. Mike Williams on a particular like go ball for sure, that kind of trust. And I think with Quentin, you can start building that trust. I love that. I didn't realize that they had checked into that play to Quentin. That's awesome. And who would have thought at 2 weeks into the season, Quentin Johnston is ahead of Zay Flowers in yards per reception, yards after the catch per reception, and yards per route run, and touchdowns for what it's worth. Although one is a bit of a gimme there, but still, with a lot of griping about, Quentin versus Zay. We liked Zay Flowers better in this offense. Maybe Zay Flowers will be better. But right now, Quentin Johnston has taken that next step. And if he can continue to do that, great. I'm very thankful for how he's performed and how he's stepped up with DJ Chark out and with Josh Palmer being a bit banged up. He's stepped up. And right now is kind of the wide receiver 1 in this offense and has earned the right to be out there even when DJ Chark comes back.
Yeah, right now he leads the Chargers in routes run, targets, receptions, yards. It's been effective so far. Again, not a ton of volume. We'll see what that looks like when the Chargers get into a situation where they do have to throw the ball a lot more. But Quentin Johnston, yards per route run this past week was 2.68. It was the highest number of his career. His receiving grade from PFF was the highest grade of his career. Offensive grade, highest grade of his career. So it wasn't super explosive. It wasn't, 130 yards like Marvin Harrison Jr., but it was efficient. It was effective. It was confident. And I think that's the most important thing here. His yards per route run number right now of 2.07 is 22nd in the league. And last season, that was a top 20 number overall. So if he can just be this efficient, effective player, that works. It's not going to be a ton of volume on this specific team, but you build up that role this year, and then next year maybe he takes another step, and then that's where we see the ceiling. But I think the Chargers rightfully went into this year and said, we're just going to raise the floor here. We believe in this player, and so far so good. And we'll see what happens when DJ Chark comes back. That might complicate some things in terms of his role and snaps, but I think they're very pleased with where Quentin Johnston is at right now.
If he goes out against these two defenses, two of the best defenses in the league, and puts up decent to good numbers, I don't think DJ Chark should be taking away from too many of his snaps. I don't know where you find those snaps, but you keep Quentin Johnston on the field, which is crazy considering how maybe most of us felt a month ago. But he's earning the right. We got to call it like we see it. And he's doing very well right now.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Tyler, what is your first real or fake?
I'll go with real. Slightly more negative at this point, but Gus Edwards, I think, is not 100%, or he's hit a cliff. And hopefully it's not the latter. I hope it's neither. Right now, he's not very good. Among the 39 running backs with at least 15 or more carries, he's got the 6th worst in yards per attempt number, 3rd worst yards after contact per attempt number. He's the only running back of those 39 to not force a missed tackle. He has a breakaway rate of 0 and only 2 first downs on 29 attempts, which is basically not great. I'm not a math major, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say that's not great. So I don't know what it is, but he doesn't look like himself. He definitely doesn't look explosive, and he doesn't look confident or comfortable just yet. There's something in the way he runs. Now, I didn't watch a ton of Baltimore Ravens film. I didn't just sit there and watch a ton of Gus Edwards in Baltimore film. I expected something different than what we're seeing right now, and it feels like something is off. We don't know for sure what. Obviously, he missed some time between OTAs and training camp. There was this, maybe he had a surgery. Oh, just kidding. He didn't have a surgery thing that happened. But he just doesn't look right. Even if all he was a guy that gets, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, hey, I'll take that. That's not bad. But right now he's averaging 2.9 yards per carry. And a couple of times where they've needed him on 3rd and short, he's not even picking those up. He doesn't look comfortable. He just doesn't look right now.
Yeah, you want to talk about numbers here. The Chargers lead the league in rushing yards before contact. And J.K. Dobbins is seeing that and then taking that to the next level. So rushing yards over expectation from Next Gen Stats. J.K. Dobbins leads the league in over 5 yards over expected per attempt. Gus Edwards is at negative 1.83. So J.K. is taking the expected that the Chargers doing a great job of blocking up and then exceeding that, obviously. And the explosive plays are a huge factor there. But Gus is essentially getting worse than what they are expected to get. And it's not a huge number. There's a lot worse around the league. Trey Benson is at negative 2.71. Javonte Williams is at negative 2.66. DeAndre Swift, negative 2.43. So it's not like the worst situation in the league. But, in the offseason, I did go back and watch some Gus Edwards stuff, and it was very downhill. It was vertical. I never really saw him bounce a ton of runs that were not supposed to be bounced. Like, you can bounce runs as a running back. JK does it all the time, but it has to be like a very clear cutback angle. And Gus is bouncing runs when he has a very clear, like, vertical, easy 4 or 5 yards. And the short yardage situation, it's really showing up. The first 3rd and 1 that they had, all he has to do is just go right behind Zion and Bradley Bozeman, and he easily gets 3-4 yards. Instead, he decides to bounce it. Yeah, and JC Horn makes a great play, credit to him, and he tackles him for loss. You just can't do that stuff. If you're the short yardage guy, you have to at least get the short yardage. You have to be able to, again, same kind of conversation. You have to have that floor of being an effective short yardage guy. So to me, he doesn't look like he's healthy. Obviously he knows the scheme. He's running the scheme for his entire NFL career. So I don't think it's, a lack of, understanding the playbook or anything like that. I think the offensive line is doing their job. I just think he's potentially not fully healthy. So I'm going to hold on to hope that this changes. But again, it's not going to get any easier against the Steelers and against the Chiefs. Like it's a tough situation for him to be in. So hopefully after the bye week, get him some rest. Maybe he comes back after the bye and is his usual self, but it's not looking great right now for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers, I think the Chargers are first in defensive EPA. I think the Steelers are top 5 and particularly good against the run as well. They can't have a guy like you mentioned in that play. I couldn't believe it. Zion blocks great. Bozeman seems to block great. I recall that being just go there. I think Zion gained 3 yards just from the block. Just follow behind them. The bounce outside was so unexpected. It was like, is that intentional? Were they trying? Was that the goal to get everyone to go one way and then maybe JC Horn would over pursue? was so weird to watch him bounce outside like that for a guy who's not that guy. So I was very surprised. He's not playing great right now. So hopefully he can get better. You can't go on the road against the Steelers or eventually in Kansas City, or you gotta have it. And you're bouncing on 3rd and 1 where you're 250 pounds or whatever he is, just go downhill. Like, I at least expected a bruiser maybe out of him, and he's not even trying to do that. J.K. Dobbins can handle the explosive stuff. The Chargers were going to live off explosive plays from J.K. Dobbins. That's going to be his thing. And he's a good running back as is too. Edwards just needs to at least settle into, I got my 4 yards. And that'd be great because the offensive line is blocking. It's not like it's not blocking. We just talked about Will Dissly, talked about Simi Fehoko, Joe Walt, Rashawn Slater, all these guys blocking well. J.K. Dobbins is great, with in theory, the same blocking. So Edwards has to find a way to settle in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he will get there, but we all like Kamani Vidal a whole lot. And at some point, we might have to have that conversation. Not there yet, but, there's still value for Gus to have. And even in the past, when the Ravens have had a 3 running back rotation, they've always had that kind of like big bruising running back, whether that was Gus or Latavius Murray or etc. Like, they need that short yardage guy, but he has to execute his role. And right now he's just not doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So real for me, or I guess rewind. My fake take is the optimism around the Chargers cornerback position. A lot of people talking about, they have a bona fide CB1 and, Asante and Christian Fulton have been lockdown cornerbacks. I think that is fake. I think the 2 players that the Chargers are playing at corner are properly executing their roles. And Christian Fulton in particular, I would say, is playing very, very well in his role. But I think we have to kind of pump the brakes a bit here and realize that they are not being tested. Like Devontae Adams, had a few really, really good routes against Asante Samuel Jr. But outside of that, we have not seen that. The biggest air yards that Christian Fulton has been targeted on was like 12 yards. And again, he's executing. He got a pass breakup on that play. He's playing very, very well. I don't think we can say that they have a legit CB1 quite yet. I think we have to wait and see what it looks like when they play a higher level passing attack with a higher level quarterback who is actually going to be willing to test them. Right now, the Chargers have played coverages that are confusing the quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks are Gardner Minshew and Bryce Young. They're not willing to push the ball downfield. They're not willing to test these cornerbacks outside. The receiving talent that the Chargers has faced is high end. Obviously, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers are no slouches. Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen are good players. Xavier Legette. But I think rushing to say that Fulton is locking things down and that he's a CB1 is premature. I think right now the Chargers are trying to play safe. They're trying to allow these guys to play confident. They're allowing these players to have a lot of help over the top. They're confusing the quarterback. And then they have a great pass rush as well. And I think they're executing their roles at a high level, but their roles are not that indicative of a true CB1. I think when I think of like a legit CB1, like it's a corner who does not need any help. He is going to at least occasionally shadow opposing wide receivers. He's going to take the assignment of the best receiver on the opposite sideline. He's going to make plays on the football. He's going to shut things down. We're not there yet. We haven't seen enough evidence there to call either of these cornerbacks that kind of player. They do deserve credit for playing well, but I'm pumping the brakes on like lockdown corner CB1 talk right now.
Yeah, as am I. I don't think that's even a slight against them. I just think we maybe need to see it happen and happen for a very long time. For at least for many games throughout the season where they actually are tested. The good news is, I think for the most part, when they are tested, especially Christian Fulton, looks great. Like when they're tested, it looks solid. So that's good. They're performing at the level that is expected of them against the competition that they face. I think overall performing solid. We'll see about lockdown CB1 and all that. I think it's interesting to look at some of the stats or the numbers of the film of this defense, and you can pick apart different parts that maybe are a bit overrated right now, but it's the system that keeps this defense so great, and the communication and the structure and all that. Like that all seems to work. Minter's pressing all the right buttons for this defense. But it's not necessarily the corners like they're being lockdown corners that they can absolutely, be that guy.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be fair to call them a lockdown corner either of them a lockdown corner right now until they do it consistently one-on-one against an individual who's considered, a very good receiver. Like Adams, you mentioned, Minshew just couldn't get it there, or they found a different way to get him open, or it's something over the middle related to a linebacker or a safety. So I'd love to see. I don't know if it'll be this week against Justin Fields, but at some point they are going to be tested, and that's when I think we'll know what we really have in this secondary.
It's not going to be a huge test in the same sense of like the offensive line, but Justin Fields will throw a go ball. Like he is very willing to take some chances downfield, and so I think we'll see a different kind of test. It's not going to be like a high-end passing attack or a high-end game, but like when we get to November and they're playing against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, what does that look like? When they're playing Lamar Jackson, who's an MVP player, like what does that look like? What does that look like in 2 weeks from now when they're playing Patrick Mahomes and not that the Chiefs have like amazing weapons, but Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice have, lit it up against some of these opposing corners. So I think we just need to see it, and they deserve credit for playing well, but like, let's pump the brakes a bit there. Okay, Tyler, your last one here, and then we'll get to some of these super chats and head out for the night.
Yeah, I'll go quick. It's not even necessarily from film specifically, but I think I want to adjust maybe what we're thinking of with this defense. This idea that Jesse Minter's going to send the house and they're going to blitz like crazy. Could it be Wink Martindale? Could it be, McDonald? What's it going to look like? They really don't. Honestly, they don't blitz a ton. Their blitz rate is 19th in the NFL at 23.2%. The highs being like 45 to 50 in the NFL. Shocker, by the way, Gus Bradley's a top 10 blitz rate guy in the NFL this year, which I never saw coming because last year he was dead last, always dead last. This year, top 10. Now that it's not working. But they don't blitz a ton, and their pressure rate is actually the 5th lowest in the NFL based on whatever they do, not just blitzing, but pressure in general. Their pressure rate is actually not that high. Now, that's, I think, a product of who they've been facing. There's no long dropbacks for Bryce Young and Gardner Minshew, and we're going to toss it down the field. Clearly, we have not seen that. So they've, a lot of check down stuff, a lot of quick stuff, a lot of, vanilla things out there for those two quarterbacks. Right now, they're not blitzing a ton. They're not getting a ton of pressure either. It's still a very good defense, obviously. But I think I'm curious how things shake out when there's a quarterback who hold onto the ball longer, and then also test them more. There's a couple things we want to see. Look, we're all waiting for the Chiefs game. Honestly, we're all waiting for this Chiefs game to really see what this defense is.
Yeah, right now they're first in a lot of categories, but the Saints are like second. And what do those teams have in common? They both play the Panthers. So yeah, you got to wait and see. I was surprised at how few they blitzed Bryce Young because we talked about it. He was awful against the blitz in week 1. And so I was looking at that going, oh, like Jesse Minter likes the blitz. This is going to be a blitz heavy game and just make life very difficult. Instead, they opted to confuse him in coverage. And so that can be a very game plan specific thing. You also want to put certain things on tape. And so I was a little surprised at just the lack of blitzes and the lack of pressure, but I do think the Panthers have a pretty quality offensive line. We saw them. I think Ike Ekwonu had some really good moments against Kilo Mack. Unfortunately, I thought Taylor Moton played pretty well. The guards played pretty well. Austin Corbett's a quality center. So I think some of that was, the Panthers having a better offensive line than what we were thinking. And then also Bryce Young had the 3rd quickest time to throw of any quarterback in the league. So they were doing on some screens. They were doing some short passes, RPO action. Like they really clearly did not want the Chargers pass rush to affect them the way that it did against the Raiders. So I think, the Chargers potentially were expecting some of that and playing coverage instead of blitzing. So, smart coaching there. That's why I'm not an NFL coordinator and Jesse Minter is.
Yes. Oh yeah. Hey, do whatever you want. If it works, I don't care. It's more just an adjustment of like, hey, what was the defense going to look like? Oh, it's a little bit different. I think this week against Fields, they can get some more pressure, but I don't know. The Zach Frazier and those guys are playing pretty well.
Justin Fields holds the ball for quite a long time. So yes, that should be a bit of a different situation.
Yes. Yep.
But a great point to point out for sure. All right. Super sticker from Joe Cruz. Appreciate that one, Joe. I don't know if there is a question attached, but usually with a super sticker, there is not. So I think Joe just sent that in. And then Brian Stowe as well, super sticker. NSN, our first super chat of the day. He says, I feel the Chargers deserve some good luck, and Alt turning out to be elite from the get-go is just a start. 2024 has to be different for us.
I hope so. It's at least trending in the right direction. Obviously, 2-0 for the first time since 2012. You and I discussed before the draft, we preferred Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously. But we said specifically with this team, Joe Alt has the best chance to reach his fullest potential and hit his ceiling with Harbaugh and these guys.
Yeah.
So while we preferred a receiver, it was undeniable that these guys would he had a higher chance of getting Joe Alt's ceiling than Malik Neighbors in this offense. And so far, I don't know what Neighbors would look like with Justin Herbert. I'm sure it'd be pretty cool, but it's undeniable that Alt, it's the best case scenario right now what we're getting out of Joe Alt.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors has like a 65% target share in New York. So we'll get to see what he looks like. But I don't, I'm sure he probably prefers to play with a better quarterback as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you look at the offensive tackles that went in the second round, like Kingsley Suamataia, he's really struggling. I mean, he got benched outright against Trey Hendrickson. So it's so much more difficult to find offensive tackle play outside of the first round, as we've seen. Much easier to play receivers, and Ladd McConkey in a very limited role has looked very, very good. I've been very happy with where he's at. I would like to see some more volume there, but he's playing well also.
Yeah, he is.
Nicholas, can you see the Chargers switching Alt and Slater? No.
Nope.
I think Joe Alt potentially has a higher ceiling, but Rashawn to me is the best player on the team right now. I've had this take when he's been healthy before. He's been awesome in 2 games. So he deserves a ton of credit. Big shout out to him as well.
Yeah, Rashawn Slater, it's wild that we don't even talk about him. He's only allowed 1 pressure this season. And we're not even really talking about him because Joe Alt's been so good. But Rashawn Slater's been amazing too. Not moving either.
Yeah. Nicholas back here. What do the Chargers have to do these next 2 games for you to have full confidence in our defense and offense and to say we are a top 10 team?
I mean, that's tricky. The offense, get more to like that 20 points per game number with a defense that also holds opponents to, not 1 touchdown in 8 quarters, but, 2, like 17 points a game.
Yeah.
Mostly just win. I really do think that if they beat the Steelers, it's a great win on the road. Tough team, obviously. They're also 2-0. But I think that real official stamp and needle mover is beating the Chiefs. So whatever that ends up being, if they beat them, that's really the one. I could understand why people would say the Chargers aren't a top 10 team if they're 3-0 because of who they faced, because the Panthers have scored 1 touchdown all season. The Steelers have scored 1 touchdown all season. Yeah. So it's not like a whole offensive juggernaut walking into town. So beat the Chiefs.
Yeah. I don't even know if beat the Chiefs is necessarily like what I need to see because the Chiefs are just like so good. Yeah. But every Chiefs game that I have ever watched is the exact same. The opposing team can never take advantage of the Chiefs' mistakes, and they're going to make a couple because Patrick Mahomes likes to take chances, and so does Steve Spagnuolo. Like it's an aggressive, forward-thinking team, and that's going to lead to some mistakes. But you saw against the Bengals this week, they picked off Patrick Mahomes, one of the best interceptions you'll ever see in your life. And then Joe Burrow immediately fumbles the ball right back. And even if the Chiefs had not recovered it for a touchdown, that's just it's what happens against the Chiefs. I don't know what it is. Mahomes will throw a pick or Kelsey will fumble. We've seen him do this weird lateral thing a couple of times. They'll miscue on the pitch play that they run a whole lot. And then the other team, it's always a 3-and-out or a turnover right after that. Nobody has that kind of luck outside of the Chiefs. It's crazy to me. So that's one thing I need to see from this team that is right now they are so buttoned up and dialed in. When you are able to get Patrick Mahomes to make a mistake, you have to take advantage. That's one thing that has to happen. You've got to be able to affect him from a pass rush standpoint. Trey Hendrickson had 9 pressures on Sunday and very clearly affected Patrick Mahomes. So you've got to get after him. You've got to affect the quarterback. And then on defense, or against their defense, you've got to be physical. The Chargers are priding themselves on, like, we're a physical team. We're going to run the football. The Chiefs are the most physical defense in the league right now. They want to punish everybody. And if the Chargers can match that, that's what I want to see. So it's not even if they win or lose. I want them to be competitive, obviously, but I need to see that identity shine through. I need to see these consistent coaching points shine through. And then we can kind of talk about where they're at, because I think right now they haven't had a real true like litmus test of, are they contender? Are they not? This is a playoff team, or are they not? I think Colin Cowherd calling them the third best team in the league is absolute batshit crazy, personally.
Yeah.
But if they are competitive against the Chiefs, they take care of the football, they match their physicality, that's when I'll start to really like, okay, this is probably a playoff team.
Yeah, definitely. If this defense in particular shows up and, Kelsey isn't getting 1 million yards after the catch and Rashid Rice this or that, then I think, I don't think they need to beat the Chiefs to be considered a top 10 team. I agree with you.
Yeah. Next one here from Ivan. How do you think Thule is doing in the new system, and any news on Junior Colson? No news on Junior Colson. I'll let you answer the Thule stuff, but he has a hamstring injury. The Chargers have not practiced. They'll have their first practice tomorrow. So we'll see what happens there, but no news there.
I don't have any particular thoughts on Tuli Tuipulotu, who hasn't. I mean, he's played a good amount, but I don't think he has a notable sack or play. I think some block destruction in the run game. Let me see what his numbers are. So he has he has literally one tackle on the season, no pressures, no stops.
Yeah,
it's not exactly what it was last year.
No, and he's playing a lot less. It's a different role. When they go to their multiple edge rushers, he's almost always rushing against the guards, which he can do, but they're not giving him a ton of true one-on-one pass rush reps either. They have played some good offensive tackles, I would say. So we'll see what happens there. He's playing physical. He's a pest as a defensive tackle. He's setting a mean edge. He's doing all the little things. It's just not translating to production right now.
Yeah. I was actually surprised to see those numbers.
Yeah. Last one. Expect opposing teams to start stacking the box more against the run. Not necessarily Pitt next week, but in general. By the way, thanks y'all and BTFU. The Raiders stacked the box on like 70% of the runs against the Chargers. So the Panthers are just one of those teams that do not do that. And I think it was about 30%, if I remember correctly. But it's a lot of that specific thing is like who the defense is, because the Raiders are an older school defense. They stack the box a lot. Panthers are a new school defense. They very rarely did it. And obviously that showed up in the run game. So I think it's scheme dependent of who they're playing. I feel like the Steelers do stack the box quite a bit, and so do the Chiefs. But some of these newer school defenses, they don't do it a whole lot.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the 2 game plans, I'm picking the Raiders one. That clearly was more effective against the Chargers. So go slightly more like that than not stacking the box. But the good news is they did, like with Quentin Johnston, they did try to push the ball down the field. So there's at least some of like that back off like a little bit there. But I would stack the box. I mean, I like the Chargers receiver room, but go with the corners you have with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Go show me that Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer, who might be hurt, can beat me and stack the box.
Yeah, I would as well. All right. What a fun show, man. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, because I sure had a great time talking about it. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
I appreciate the audience in the chat today. Almost 450 of you guys right now at the end of our 75-minute live stream. Just reviewing film, which is never always the most fun thing. And technically, we don't even have film on the screen right now due to copyright reasons, and I apologize. I appreciate you guys being here. It's awesome. I feel the excitement. I think we just wanted to get past the Panthers game to get to these next 2. I feel that excitement ramping up. I'm so stoked for this game on Sunday.
Yeah, 2 huge games coming up. I don't think this Sunday is going to be super entertaining fireworks, but next week is going to be crazy. I will be there at SoFi Stadium with you guys, so excited to get to see my first Chiefs game in person. So it should be a lot of fun. All right, guys, we'll be back on Thursday for our full Steelers preview. Hopefully you're able to tune in at that time, and then we'll be back to our usual weekend schedule as well. So we appreciate you so much for tuning in. This has been the Guilty as Charged podcast. As always, bolt up.